Christine here with a discussion slash first impression slash review for Dragon Age the Veilguard. I say first impression slash review because I've spent roughly 30 hours into the game, but I'm nowhere near the end of the game. I think I have another 30 hours to go with it. But I am also someone who has spent a lot of time playing Dragon Age as a series. I played Origins 6 times, I played Dragon Age 2 or 3 times, didn't quite like it. I played Inquisition 3 times. And I've played every single BioWare game quite a few times ever since Knights of the Old Republic 1. Obviously, Knights of the Old Republic 2 was made by Obsidian, and I'm kind of sad what's happened to them as a company as of late. Let's just say Obsidian's products as of late haven't been particularly great. But regardless, I am someone who was very invested in Dragon Age. In the sense that one of the reasons I became a content creator on YouTube was because of Dragon Age Origins. Specifically because I was very active on the BioWare social network when that was still a thing. Met some people, still have some connections that I keep to this day from people. And they recommended a playthrough of someone by the name of Togoth doing a playthrough of Dragon Age Origins. I was like, yeah, this guy's too much of a goody two-shoes. Let's go for something more interesting. And I started. The first playthrough, the first real videos that I ever did were Dragon Age videos. Some music videos I did, a playthrough of Dragon Age Awakening, Dragon Age 2 when it came out. And yeah, I've played a lot of Mass Effect. How do I feel about Veilguard then? Well, in terms of its performance, in terms of its technical, though not artistic graphics, and yes, there is a clear difference in those, it is the best game that BioWare has ever put together. It runs really well, for the most part. Even with like maxed out ray tracing, yes, I might use frame generation, but I can tell you there's a lot of games that have frame generation out there that run really badly, even with frame generation. This game runs really well, has pretty solid loading times, not the best loading times I've seen in the world, but really solid performance, really feels smooth. And it's not just like smooth in the sense like, oh, how your character moves, like how your character picks up stuff, how your character climbs up a ladder, how your character climbs up a ledge, all that. There are some issues with the controls, and it's annoying that you can't really customize your keybinds. I've tried. But I also have to give BioWare credit for one very significant thing. Like, I've been playing with the default keybinds in this game on mouse and keyboard, and unlike every other game that I've played on PC for so many years, you know, God of War, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and all that, I haven't had to rebind a single key. Sure, I would like to rebind some things to, you know, make it work better for me personally, but I haven't felt the need to. Whereas many other games, if I didn't rebind stuff, it would be fairly painful. And I'm playing this game on Nightmare difficulty. So I've played every single BioWare game that I've ever played. Jade Empire, Knights of the Republic, Mass Effect, on the highest difficulty. I've completed all of them multiple times. I think my record is like 12 playthroughs of Mass Effect 2. Yeah, it was pretty crazy with respect to how I felt about Mass Effect 2 back in the day. My point is this game feels smooth, runs smooth, and if I were to make a comparison in how it feels, I think in some ways, like in terms of the smoothness aspect, it feels like kind of like God of War. In some ways better than God of War, because God of War has moments where it's clunky. Like, let me be clear, like some of the moments where like Kratos is climbing up ledges or opening chests or all that kind of stuff can feel a bit clunky. I haven't really felt that with Veilguard. The only situations where I felt it's a bit off is like if you're dealing with certain opponents in certain situations and the terrain is just like, because you have a jump key and your character will not automatically jump like when you're like at the edge of a ledge, and you would automatically want to go down from that when you're in combat. So that is annoying. But I emphasize from that perspective, like how the moment-to-moment gameplay feels. And also the balancing of it. This is not an obnoxious game. Every single Dragon Age game has felt very clunky, very obnoxious in ways. Some have been better than others. But if anyone wants to tell me with a straight face that Dragon Age Origins had good gameplay, it did not. The story, the characters of the stories, the story, the performance, all that, the world, those were great. The actual gameplay was not. Don't get me wrong, I hated Dragon Age 2, and I didn't particularly like a lot of aspects of Inquisition. But in this game, things do feel substantially better. Like, I'll give you an idea. There are enemies that can be difficult in this game, but every single time that I've encountered an enemy that took, say, a decent amount of time to kill, and I certainly have encountered them, it was because of my decisions. Like, as I've been playing a mage, and this is the first time in Dragon Age where I've really, really enjoyed playing a mage. Granted, it's not quite a mage as much as it feels like a rogue with a staff, because I'm literally using a dagger most of the time, and I'm fighting in melee, but it's like, I don't know, Battle Mage, if you will, or some hybrid rogue mage combination. You can play a more traditional mage, but clearly they've put a lot of thought and effort into trying to make the combat work. And it's not just like how your character controls or the options you have. People will mention that, oh, your party members can't die, you can't control them directly. But I gotta say this much, like from that perspective. Some of the reviewers have stated, well, I didn't care because, I had plenty of stuff to deal with. I personally didn't care about it because, one, your party members are actually really important because they have abilities and their builds and their equipment does matter. It's not like Mass Effect Andromeda where it didn't matter. Like, it didn't really feel that it mattered how you built your party except like some detonations on that. Here, it's not just like detonations, and clearly they've been inspired by that aspect and they took it and upped it up to 11, but it's not just like, oh, I'll just do a combo of abilities and that's the use I'm getting from party members. No, it's taunts, it's healing, it's distractions. It's a lot of things that your party does do that if you're trying to play this and ignore your party, that is not going to happen. On some level, I really appreciate the fact that I'm not having to micromanage multiple characters. And when I say that, it's because in so many BioWare games, including the Mass Effect games, I felt like I had to control every single one of their actions. Else they would die, or they wouldn't contribute to anything. Here, I do have to use their abilities, but but you can only use one ability, and they all share a cooldown. So you're not just like going into like the ability menu or, key binding all the squad member abilities in Mass Effect and just using all of them on cooldown. So I do find that better in a lot of ways. And I think BioWare with this game has really managed to do something so many games struggle with. How do you have a party of multiple characters and make them useful, but also not make it annoying to deal with? God of War made your party members just being support characters that could offer some use, to be sure, and were important in certain fights, but did feel pretty useless, like Atreus and Freya in God of War Ragnarok. Here, it's far more substantial, even if they can't die. Party members can revive you if you have certain gear on them. How you level them up, it's like, oh, you don't just gain experience. You have to do missions with them. And when I say do missions with them, you have to talk with them, get various missions done, their own personal objectives done, all that. So you are involved in, in not just controlling your character, but your team. And there's so many different playstyles that are viable, like how you manage equipment and different abilities. That is really, really good. I certainly feel that my party is far more useful than it ever was in, say, Mass Effect Andromeda, where, I was basically playing the game solo. There were just some bots that were, at best, a distraction. At best. With some combat uses, but for the most part, they didn't feel substantial. Here they do feel more substantial. Some of them, like all of them, offer something. None of them are useless. Like, there's no situation like I felt with, say, Jacob in Mass Effect 2, where, like, this guy's useless, I will never use him. No, I've been using every single party member. Sure, there are some that are better than others, partly because for some I've gotten more equipment easier than others. And there is a build that I've gone for that certainly makes, one, Bellara far more useful than others. There are certainly some things that do make certain companions better than others, far better. Like for Bellara, for instance, Bellara gives the ability to heal you and recharge your ultimate ability on that heal, so that is incredibly powerful. But again, many different things, many different moving parts. So it's not like, oh, you're just playing a hack and slash roly-poly game, as some people complain. Yeah, you do roll, you do avoid attacks, but honestly, if you're ever in a situation where you have to roll constantly in a battle and just avoid attacks, you've clearly failed on building your character in some way, shape, or form. I've ended up in those situations, and it always was my fault, for instance, on Nightmare difficulty. And then when I change, like, even one item can be a significant difference. So I do like the gameplay. I do like the combat, I like the bosses, I like quite a few things. If there's anything that I do find tiring from a gameplay combat perspective is clearly the developers did design quite a few environments and they want to get their mileage out of them. It's not so bad in, say, Ravane, for instance, or in the Necropolis when you go there, because you may go there like, once, twice and redo what you've already done, but then more areas open up to you. That isn't necessarily great, but it's not great in Minrathous and Arlothan, because like you are going there 5-6 times to really explore things, and you're retreading a lot of the ground you've already done. That is not particularly great. So certainly they wanted to avoid the hinterlands experience in Dragon Age Inquisition. A lot of people hated that. But I feel like they still want you to go back and do these levels again and again and again. So that does start feeling tedious to a certain extent. Treviso, the city in Antiva that you go to, also doesn't feel particularly great. So like the combat, moment-to-moment gameplay, the customization that you have, all that, even the transmog that you have for armors, that is great. But the grindiness of some of the side quests and exploration is not great. I do like the item system though, because like you don't just get like one powerful item. Typically, you have a couple of like unique items, red items that are really strong. But for the most part, a lot of the items you'll find that are really good, it's like you find one version of it. You find it once and you have to find it twice to upgrade it from like, say, white level to green to blue to purple to epic level. And that's how you handle that. You can also customize items and even your own abilities through your lighthouse. So there is certainly quite a lot of things over there to like. And like, just this gameplay, for instance. This is Davrin's recruitment mission. It's not the pinnacle of the gameplay over here, but it's actually quite a fun mission. If there is a criticism that I would give, though, is that when you're recruiting a companion, you don't necessarily know what abilities you're going to have. And so the synergy you might have with them in your party may not be the best initially. It might be a great idea to, like, when you're starting one of these recruitment missions, just start it, see what abilities they have, or just check a wiki and then, go with a party member that you think is going to mesh well with them. Now, one thing I have to mention before I finish with the combat and gameplay section over here is with regards to spongy enemies, because that certainly has been a running theme in Dragon Age as a series. And Veilguard does have some enemies that can take a long time to defeat, but every single time that I've encountered an enemy like this, it's generally been my fault as a player. Either because, like with the gameplay footage you're seeing over here, I'm dealing with an enemy that's much higher level than me, or higher level, like I think this guy was like 7 levels above me. I still defeated him, but it's kind of worth pointing out that you could encounter a boss fight like this in Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Inquisition, and even the Mass Effect games, that you could be the same level, maxed out character, and it would still take like half a fucking hour in some cases to defeat. Here, if you're encountering an enemy at the same level as you, and you're built properly, there will be some level of challenge, to be sure, but you're not going to spend more than like 4 minutes or so to defeat him. And even this fight wasn't necessarily the longest fight in the world. And this boss in particular is kind of like a Valkyrie boss that you would encounter in God of War, or a Berserker fight in God of War Ragnarok, because yes, Veilguard does take heavy inspiration from those games, which is not a bad thing at all. And if I've encountered spongy enemies outside of bosses, it's because I had some mistakes in my build. Like, for instance, this character, I have certain items over here that are doing, or one item that's doing a lot of damage to myself when I'm hitting an enemy, which is not a great thing when the enemy you're dealing with is several levels higher than you and you don't have the capability of, like, taking advantage of that. So that is absolutely where you can encounter some spongy enemies, but it has generally been a very pleasant experience with respect to that. You just got to pay attention to your build, to your party strategy, to the gear of your party and all that. And if you encounter some enemies like this in open world, just go out there, do some more leveling, even if it's for the main story, get some different pieces of gear, and yeah, try again. Like, there was a moment where I encountered a boss like that was like 13 levels higher than me. Like I was like 24, he was 37. I was like, okay, I defeated the level 30 boss to get to you, and then there's a level 37 enemy after that, and I'm 24. I'm like, I am not gonna spend 20 minutes to defeat you. I could have. Keep in mind that. I absolutely could have. But that kind of dynamic of like, oh, boss taking 20 minutes, that was kind of the norm. Here it's the exception rather than the rule. And that is absolutely a much more pleasant experience to be dealing with. And finally, I'm going to say it. Whatever you might think of EA and BioWare and the decisions that BioWare has made with this game, and believe me, there are some very, very questionable decisions with this game and the story aspect. But this game didn't launch with DRM. It didn't launch with a 1-year DLC plan or pass system all that. I believe that we only got some like, cosmetic armor choices or some armors with like the deluxe edition or something like that, which you can access anyway through. Like I didn't buy the game, I just got EA access for a month. That was it. So, yeah, EA Pro. That was it. So that is all we're getting in terms of like greedy business practices from the developers over here or from the publisher. There is no DLC plan. They're focused on the next Mass Effect game. So yeah, I gotta appreciate that. And no de novo. Thank fuck for that. So many games I've played have been ruined by de novo, or have had their performance significantly decreased by that. Like Hogwarts Legacy, people tested it out with and without de novo, and it's like 20 FPS difference. And it's not just like the FPS difference, it's the smoothness of the gameplay. Like, this is really freaking smooth. For a game that looks like this, with the ray tracing options this has, this is really freaking smooth. I wish I could run it without frame generation, and I could probably if I disabled the ultra ray tracing that I have enabled over here. But yeah, that is very much appreciated. So with the good out of the way, let's talk about the bad. And make no mistake, for all the good this game does, there is plenty of bad as well. Now, for all the good the game does, from a combat level, gameplay level, performance level, lack of DRM, and other things, the story of the game is a gigantic freaking pile of crap. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't really hate the story or the characters as much as some other people do, but there are some very significant issues. Like, for instance, we're dealing with this world-ending threat in the two elven gods that we accidentally, quote-unquote, freed in the prologue, and while trying to stop Solus, which honestly should have been the entire point of the game, but it didn't. Like, if you played Trespasser, you got the impression over there that we were going to spend the game trying to track down Solus and stop him, and then that this big decisions would be what to do and how maybe you convinced Solus to do something else. From what I've seen, and I have checked spoilers and all that, I know the endings of the game, that is gonna happen, but the way they've decided to do it is really bad. Like, I'm gonna be clear though, I don't really care as much about like the main antagonists are now very well written. Every single main antagonist in every single Dragon Age game has been really poorly written. You think the Archdemon was a great antagonist? I mean, sure, it was huge and a big threat, and I guess they handled that aspect of this world-ending threat well enough. Meredith was not a good antagonist. Corypheus was not a good antagonist, though certainly I think Corypheus had more potential than these guys did. It was never a question about like, oh, the big bad that we're dealing with being the problem, or the thing that sold those games. It was the interactions, the character, the lore, all that. And this is where my issues come in. I've played this series for a very, very long time. I started my career as a content creator because of the conversations I had with people about the story and the universe back in the days of Dragon Age Origins. The story here isn't great. The companions, there's some moments, some are bad, some are good, but the problem is, there's two principal issues. One, every single decision, major or minor decision, even decisions that should have an impact, even decisions regarding characters that show up in this game, like Dorian and Isabella, those do not matter in this game. It would have been interesting, say for instance, if you played the Hawk and you gave Isabella to the Arishok back in Dragon Age 2, and how she would be as a character. Because even in Dragon Age 2, it's mentioned she escaped with that. So maybe we'd have different character interactions. Or you look at Inquisition. who survives the Fade experience? Is it Stroud? Is it Hawk? Is it Loghain? Is it Alistair? None of that has any impact. And yet, we are dealing with the story in an area with characters that should be impacted by the decisions we made. This is what is infuriating. But an even bigger problem beyond all of our choices being rendered completely and utterly meaningless, everything that we've done before not mattering at all in any way, shape, or form, except who the fuck the Inquisitor romance, apparently, because that is the one thing they had to carry over. I understand why it mattered with regards to Solas, because the Inquisitor could romance Solas. I get that. But the only things that matter is, like, did the Inquisition get disbanded? Did it get preserved? And what did you say in the final conversation with Solas and Trespasser? That was pretty much it. Like, did you try and convince Solas, did you tell Solas they were going to try and convince him to back down, to change his ways? Or did you vow that you would try and stop him as the Inquisitor? Now that the Inquisitor is a significant entity in this game. So, lots of problems across the board from the previous decisions having any kind of impact in this game. They absolutely don't. But what's even worse, far worse than that, is like the lore in itself is rendered meaningless. Like, a lot of the things we saw in previous games are handled very poorly. Magic, spirits, the Fade, the Black City, the Maker, the Elven Gods, very, very poorly handled. Like in every Dragon Age game, up until this one, there have been several consistent points, because the developers cared at least to some degree about lore consistency. Sure, there were absolutely things that they were retconning, how the Qunari looked, their culture, etc., but there have been consistent points. One of the things is with regards to the elves. Let's consider this aspect with the elves. And even in Dragon Age Trespasser, which, by the way, ignored a lot of the things you did in Inquisition to begin with, but consider Dragon Age Trespasser. You have an elf that's working for the Qunari because the Qunari can offer them a better life, which, by the way, goes back all the way back to Dragon Age 2, because elves are treated like trash in the rest of Thedas. And then you have elves that would side with Solas. And you could have had that conflict. And, a third faction of elves, elves that feel in a different way, that prefer their current lifestyle or might be convinced of a different thing. And you could have had that very, very interesting conflict. But you don't have that conflict. Every single elf you meet in this game, including your own character if it's an elf, and I'm certainly playing an elf myself. I'm playing an elven mage. I think it feels appropriate for this game. But even playing an elf yourself, every single elf you encounter, doesn't matter if they're veil jumpers or not, they're like, we hate the gods, we hate Solas, we're going to side against both of them. There's no conflict. It could have been such an interesting conflict. I can understand Bioware may want to avoid something like collective responsibility and all that kind of stuff, considering like the elves are responsible for everything, but this is very bad. That's the first point. The second point, the Blight. So the Elven Gods are weaponizing the Blight. They had the hand in creating it as we know it. Actually, they were pretty much responsible for it as we know it. Like, it existed apparently before that, but they created the current version of the Blight as we know it. There's more things to say on that, but I won't get too deep into it. Here's the thing with the Blight. So you have Venatori, who sided with the Elven Gods. Okay, fair enough, they sided with Corypheus. What's siding with some Elven Gods, right? But the Venatori, that doesn't make sense for the Venatori either, because they're all about the glory of the Tevinter Imperium. So now, we're going to side with the Elven Gods for power. Right. So the elves won't side with their own gods. The Venatori, who are Tevinter supremacists, or portrayed as Tevinter supremacists, are going to side with... Yeah. Is that stupid. But here's the thing about the Blight. The Elven Gods give them a way to control Darkspawn. But here's a point that's been consistently reinforced in every single Dragon Age game. That apparently doesn't matter in this one. The Blight is incurable. It kills everyone and eventually kills and turns everyone that deals with it mad. No problem. Like, these guys are just lunatics, apparently. And the Venatori doing it is one thing. The other group that sides with the Elven Gods, I can't believe I'm saying this. The other group that's siding with the Elven Gods are the Qunari. The Qunari! So you're telling me the Qunari, who hate magic to such a degree that they're insane about it, the Qunari who, from Sten to Dragon Age 2 to Dragon Age Inquisition, in every single story, have gone completely insane. Oh, but we're not dealing with Qunari. It's you know, it's Dantam because soldiers are evil and the builders and all that are peaceful, peace-loving people, right, among the Qunari. Yeah, plain bullshit on that subject. Or Rivain knew peace among the Qunari. No, it's not like that. Some people at the Qunari left behind knew peace, not the Qunari as a whole. But okay, let's go with that. So the Qunari fight. One of the things Sten mentions about this, he hates that the Qunari, and it's very much reinforced in Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, to emphasize that. The Qunari hate mages. Part of the reason is because of their wars with Tevinter. And the Tevinter mages are really horrible because they go on the deep end with things like blood magic and demons. So yeah, the Qunari are very suspicious and don't like mages. They ally these elven gods because these elven gods give them power. And what do they do with that power? They use that power to attack a city that they have under their own occupation. They already control it, and then they burn their own city to the ground. Yes, it is that fucking stupid. And we go further. Apparently, what happened in the Qunari with the Qunari off screen, and I'm not sure if this was ever in any other piece of media, because I certainly don't follow the comics or, you know, books, other books. I read the Stolen Throne, that's it. But apparently this is new. So what happened with the Qunari is that the Arishok had the rebellion against him by the Qunari military, Dam Tam. Incidentally, the canonical Arishok is Sten. So Sten is apparently a buffoon, a clown, and an idiot who lost the entire control of his own military. Okay, complete character assassination right there. No problem whatsoever. Sure, let's go with that. That apparently happened, and then these Qunari launched a full-scale invasion with no logistical support or supply lines or anything like that against the rest of Thedas. They've been fighting Tevinter, and they conquered Antiva. And we ally the Crows. You know, the Crows, remember Zevran in Dragon Age Origins, who emphasized time and again how horrible the Crows are? And we saw it. The same Zevran who in Dragon Age Inquisition is apparently leading a civil war among the Crows to try and topple the current regime. Yeah, those Crows, they're the good guys. My brain hurts, like, really, not just as a Dragon Age fan, but like in terms of like in terms of writing quality, this is absolutely bananas on the highest possible level. Just like, it's clear that these guys could not care. They just wanted to give another enemy besides, you know, Venatori. And they had opportunities. Like, maybe it's a group of Dantam you find. No, it's all of Dantam that apparently, except the few that stayed with Sten, because apparently a couple of them stayed with Sten. By the way, all of this is in a codex entry. You just end up fighting Qunari at one point when they decide to attack their own freaking city to put down the Crows. When they already controlled the city, and the Crows are just fighting a war in the shadows, or the Venatori attacking Menrafas. Actually, that's more reasonably handled because they're trying to do a palace coup and using a dragon attack as a distraction. That's actually more reasonably handled, but everything involved in the Qunari is pure freaking bananas on every level. Don't get me started about the Grey Wardens or anything like that, or the Blight or Solus or anything like that. Yeah, they've butchered the entire Dragon Age lore. They've butchered many characters. They flat ignore other characters. What's even worse, let me go on what's even worse. You know Hawk, who's not in this game, who could have been in this game, should have been in this game, because Hawk was heading over to Weisshaupt if they survived the Fade. Hawk's male voice actor is playing the first Warden in this game. Loghain's voice actor is playing some inconsequential characters they meet a couple of times. So clearly they had the voice actors. So it's just garbage. Pure freaking garbage. it isn't presented as garbage, but make no mistake, if you put any thought or effort or thinking into trying to figure out how the story makes any bit of sense, it will not. Oh, look, there's a griffin, it's cute and funny, and that's it, right? Yeah, that's basically Veilguard. Surface level garbage, basically, on a story level. So my conclusion on all of this, let me say it. From a gameplay combat perspective, it's a fun game. It's worth playing from that point of view. I've certainly enjoyed my time. And I'm someone who plays video games for a living, and I can tell you I've played a lot of games that I have not enjoyed playing. I've spent 30 hours in this game, and I'm not feeling it. When I replay it, I don't take it seriously. So if you're a Dragon Age fan, you'll be annoyed to hell and back by this game. But if you're just looking for a fun RPG fantasy world, I guess you could enjoy certain things about this game from a story level. But really, the combat and gameplay sell it. The story is hot pile of garbage. Some moments here and there, but yeah, it's not even surface deep. Like, it's literally just pure garbage. Like you actually have to dive deeper into like codex entries to try and make sense of it, because it's so awful on a surface level that it's like you just go, what the fuck is going on? Like, even Call of Duty, you know, people complain like Call of Duty has a bad story. I've played the recent Black Ops game, and I can tell you, Call of Duty puts more effort into having a good story than this. Like, that's what Dragon Age: The Veilguard is. So my conclusion, when I see reviewers saying that this is a good game and it's worth playing, I understand why, right? Because ultimately, a game is not sold on just the story. The story is an important aspect, but it has to be good gameplay. It has good gameplay. And if you're willing to turn off your brain, then it can be a really fun game. Yeah, it can be. And I'm gonna finish it, and I'm going to enjoy it from that perspective. But story-wise, and as a Dragon Age game, or as a game with any kind of consistent, good quality storytelling, this is not it. Like, this is just not it. Like, what message are they trying to send? What's the big conflict? That those that are in power are awful, and it's the small groups the activists and smaller groups that fight for freedom and justice that are the good guys, even if they're murdering bastards that treat their people like trash, which is what the Crows do. Yeah, that would be how I stand on Dragon Age: The Veilguard. So I see both sides. Like, I do absolutely see both sides with respect to this. I understand where the reviewers are coming from, though it certainly doesn't help when IGN and other publications say, this is the best-selling game from EA on Steam. And I'm like, how many games has EA over the last couple of years had simultaneous Steam and Steam releases with other platforms? Yeah, not that fucking many. So it's like they're trying to justify giving this game the scores instead of just saying, look, we just enjoyed our time with it. And I understand why. There's time to be enjoyed over here. I wouldn't say it. Like, if this game was not fun at all to play, I would say that. But it is fun to play. It's also a hot pile of garbage at the same time. Make of that what you will. Costin signing out.